two wars, two hills, one name that says it all, Hamburger Hill, a place where soldiers were thrown into battle, ground down, and left asking, was it worth it? One happened in 1951 during the Korean War, the other in 1969 during Vietnam. Both became infamous for their brutality. But how do they compare? Let's take a look. First, let's go back to Korea, May 1951. The war had been raging for nearly a year, and US and South Korean forces were pushing against dug-in Chinese troops in the mountains. Their target? Hill 931, a steep, rocky peak the enemy had fortified. The US 3rd Infantry Division and South Korean troops stormed the hill, but every advance was met with artillery, machine guns, and brutal counterattacks. The Chinese fought back with human wave assaults, crashing into American lines over and over. For 6 days, the hill changed hands multiple times. But here's the real kicker. After all that, the hill was abandoned. The US command decided it wasn't worth holding. 7,000 men were killed or wounded for a battle that meant nothing in the end. Now fast forward 18 years to Vietnam, May 1969. This time, US troops were up against North Vietnamese forces entrenched on Hill 937, deep in the A Shau Valley. The mountain, steep, covered in jungle. A nightmare for infantry. The enemy, dug in with bunkers, tunnels, and heavy machine guns. But US commanders wanted that hill, no matter the cost. For 10 days, soldiers from the 101st Airborne Division battled through monsoon rains, enemy ambushes, and brutal close combat. Every time they gained ground, the North Vietnamese launched counterattacks, forcing them to fight for the same land over and over again, just like in Korea. Airstrikes, napalm, and artillery were used to clear the enemy, but it wasn't enough. US troops had to take the hill the hard way, one step at a time, under relentless fire. On May 20th, 1969, after losing nearly 400 men, the United States finally took Hill 937. But just like in Korea, within days, they abandoned it. The press found out, and soon the battle became a symbol of the senseless, grinding nature of the war. So how do these two battles compare? Both were uphill fights against a dug-in enemy who refused to give ground. Both had waves of counterattacks that turned them into drawn-out slaughters. Both were abandoned after huge losses, leading soldiers to wonder, what was the point? The biggest difference? Vietnam's Hamburger Hill made headlines. The public was outraged that so many died for a hill that was never meant to be held. It became one of the defining moments of the anti-war movement. The Korean battle? It was largely forgotten, lost in the chaos of a war most Americans barely remember. Two different wars, two different hills, but the same brutal reality. Sometimes history repeats itself, and the men who fought on those hills, they carried the weight of those battles long after the war was over. Their bravery and sacrifice should never be forgotten.